Hello, everyone, and welcome to another ODNT Spotlight interview. And with us today, we have not one, but two author guests, two for the price of one. We have Jeffrey Cook and Katherine Perkins, and we're going to talk a little bit to them today. They have lots of books to share with us and lots of the diversity and working together as they collaborate on projects. Some of the first things they collaborated on was his Dawn of Stream trilogy. We have First Light, Gods of the Sun, and Rising Suns. And for that one, Jeffrey was the author and Katherine was his editor for it. And then she got the writing bug after being an editor for a while. And together, they both were accepted into the Sound and Fury, which is a Shakespeare Goes punk mashup retelling stories, which I'm definitely interested in that one. So we'll talk to them some more about that. But then they also decided to work together, and they're here showcasing their Foul is Fair, which is the first book in their Fairfolk Chronicles series. And I love that cover. That's a great cover. So let's go ahead and let's switch on over to them. And the camera, Skype is doing an interesting thing where it's going to switch back and forth as to who it thinks is talking among the two authors. So I'll let them each say hello for a moment. So we have first up Katherine. I might call her Kathy accidentally. And then you can see there is Jeff. So hi, Jeff. Hi, Kathy. Or Kate. Sorry.
Quite all right.
Hi, Steve. Nice to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. So tell me a little bit about yourselves with doing your collaboration. Or let's start with you individually. So, Jeff, how did you start into the writing?
So I have wanted to be a writer for forever. My mother likes talking about how when I was 6 years old, I was already an avid reader and talking about wanting to be an author and writing books someday. I had worked a little bit in the gaming industry and in sports journalism and working on a comic book series that never took off for about 12 years while working a job in the insurance industry to pay the bills. And when I was laid off from that and having trouble finding another job, I just decided to go for it. With NaNoWriMo coming up, and a friend had been wanting to get me to do Nano for a couple of years, but I'd been too busy with the comic book project and other things, so I decided to just go for it. And I will let Katherine tell you at some point how that first Nano went, because she loves that story far more than I do.
That'd be great. Well, here, let's switch over to you, Kate, real quick. You tell us about this.
Okay. I very much want to tell the NaNoWriMo story.
Good. We want to hear it. We want to hear it. He's already laughing.
National Novel Writing Month. What reasonably passing for sane people hope to aspire to in National Novel Writing Month is that maybe they'll be able to win by completing 50,000 words in a month, right?
Oh yeah, that's quite a challenge.
Now, Jeff here sat down, turned off the parts of his brain that allow him to distinguish its from its, or how to use a comma, or any basic grammatical rules whatsoever.
High school English? What's that?
It's true.
And then proceeded to write 300,000 words in 26 days like some kind of lunatic.
Wow.
And what's more, he didn't sleep for some of those weeks. And so the grammar was, insane the whole time in terms of the editing, but usually the story was mostly coherent. But by the third volume of this 3-volume emergent steampunk epistolary novel,
oh man,
he had reached the point where I had to sit him down and say, Jeff, I know you would want your evil mastermind to be a real challenge for our heroes, but I don't think you were sleeping too well, a few weeks into this. And while this plot did once work for Cobra Commander on G.I. Joe, it's not really worthy of an evil mastermind that provides a great challenge for our heroes. So we had to work out a new evil plot, as well as fixing all of the commas.
Oh, man.
But I will always be amazed that he was able to turn all of that off long enough to just completely 6 times what everyone is going for.
He did 6 NaNoWriMos in one day.
Yeah, and those
month.
people think they're crazy.
Wow, that would probably
this
put
is why
you.
I let her tell the story. She tells it so much better than I do, and has more fun with it.
So, did you talk to anyone? How high were you with the number wise? Were you like the number 1 NaNoWriMo guy with that kind of a word count in a month?
Oh no, there are people who do more than that regularly. I mean, there's people who do, ridiculous stories, but do 1 or 2 day nanos, or people who produce 500,000 words or more in a month.
Wow.
There's not very many of them. And most of those don't end up, actually being worthwhile books. And granted, these to end up worthwhile books needed a lot of editing and a lot of rewriting and redoing the story. But yes, the first drafts for all 3 Dawn of Steam novels were done during that first NaNoWriMo.
Wow, that is impressive.
He may not be the absolute craziest, but he's definitely among the particularly crazy, is what I'm trying to say here.
Yes. I will not deny that.
He is in the
now,
1%.
The first drafts were done, but as she pointed out, they were pretty terrible first drafts, especially the 3rd book. They needed massive rewrites, and the editing and rewrites took a whole lot longer than the original writing did. But we did eventually hammer them into books, which are now getting really good reviews, and I certainly have to blame Katherine for quite a bit of that. She did a really good job, and that's part of the reason her managing to get through that and put up with that is part of the reason she ended up as my full-time editor and now my co-writer.
If she's willing to stick through that, you've got somebody golden there.
That's exactly right.
Well, thank you.
So hats off to you both to get that through and actually take what you do at NaNoWriMo and turn it into a sellable product and get it actually onto Amazon and everything. So that's great.
Fortunately, we've worked out a better system since then.
It's
true.
It
Now
involves
we
sleep.
Every chapter, not after 3 volumes.
Yes. It involves sleep, and it involves doing 1 chapter at a time, giving the chapter... Well, first of all, we work on an outline together, so the story is more coherent, and Katherine checks me at every stage to make sure I'm staying on timeline and not contradicting myself, and doing the things that, I will fly off in weird directions and write, 5,000 words, and then she makes sure that it all fits the story and is grammatically correct. I have gotten better with its and its. Commas are still a work in progress, but she is willing to save the poor abused commas.
Are you an over comma guy?
No, here's the thing. You know those cases where you should either put 2 commas or no commas? He puts just 1. He ignores the comma buddy system of a positive phrasing. And so this comma is just left alone in a way that makes no sense. Whether you put 2 or none can be a matter of style, but you can't just put 1 and then leave the clause hanging like that.
Oh, no.
And
Yes.
yet...
He is lucky to have you, Kate.
I am lucky to have Kate. She is the better half of the writing partnership, as it were. But we work on, as far as the process, we work on an outline together, and she goes through, once we have the outline, once we have the chapters laid out, goes through non-sequentially and puts in, snippets, a paragraph here, some dialogue there, gives me something to work around, a lot of really clever dialogue and great ideas and inspirations and expansions of our original 1 or 2 sentences about each chapter, and then has me do most of the sequential long form writing, and then I hand her the chapter and she goes through and edits. Now, starting with the 2nd volume of Shakespeare Goes Punk, and with the 2nd book in the Fairfolk Chronicles, she's doing a little bit more closer to long form, but still usually leaves a lot of the long form and all of the action sequences to me.
Yeah. Action is all him. I'm legally blind. I have no knowledge of spatial relationships. And it's just all action is on him.
So yes, the fight scenes, you can either credit me or blame me in the books, but regardless, everything is passed through and edited through her. But as far as the process goes, it's been working well for us, and we've gotten much better at it.
Good, good. So you guys do an outline, especially on projects that you're working together. And how detailed is your outline?
A few sentences per chapter, and one thing about our outlines, they last exactly as long as they don't work anymore.
Yes.
Because there often comes that point where it's like, and we need to rearrange the outline now because we've just, in order to keep everything logical, it turns out we need this now, so we need to insert a chapter here, and, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
as
that's
far as the
go ahead.
Outlines go. Yeah, usually we get a rough idea and a rough outline, then we go through, guesstimate our number of chapters unless we're going with a theme and want a specific number of chapters, do a sentence or two on each one, and then start filling it out from there. And then when the outline doesn't work, we toss the outline, usually keep the end, fill in from where we are, and redo the outline. So I end up kind of a hybrid, as NaNoWriMo people put it, plotter, pantser, where I have an idea and I have a plan, and occasionally I break it, let the characters run wild, do something else. Then Katherine fixes it to make sure it's sequential, and we talk about it and redo the outline.
Very nice. Yeah, because that's the important thing to remember when you're doing an outline is you don't have to stick to it. That was just your first pass at your story. And a lot of people go, I don't want to do an outline because I don't want to be stuck to it. No, you don't have to be stuck to it. So good job. Recognizing where you skew off, because I went and, I wrote an outline and it was 20,000 words was my outline.
Oh, goodness.
Wow. That's ambitious.
That's a novella.
But I know, and that was just my outline. But, I turned it into basically 120,000 word, and now my editor's going in and adding more emotion to it, and it's probably going to be like 130, 140 when we're done.
Oh, goodness.
Wow. Okay,
But I used to just do one sentence per chapter outlines. This was my first detailed outline. So I was just curious to have how detailed your outlines got. That one got very detailed.
We usually stick to a couple of sentences per chapter method, because that really is easier to then just toss out, because sort of like the first draft of a novel, the first draft of our outline never survives contact with the enemy.
Right. So when you guys sat down to say, did you already have an idea of a book you wanted to write when you started to collaborate on Foul is Fair? Or did you say, let's write a book together?
It was another one of Jeff's waking up with a brilliant idea situations. And this time he decided he wanted me in on the ground floor. Because that's how he got into Dawn of Steam in the first place.
Uh-huh.
He just, wakes up one day with the idea of these two characters. And, this one's kind of actually belongs in a Western. And this fancy person actually belongs in more of a sci-fi novel. How can I ever put them in the same story? So then he decides to do a steampunk series.
Steampunk's the good catch-all.
Yeah, and so he'd done that, and then I'd come along and, gotten in on the editing level. And so then when he wakes up with one of those brilliant ideas again...
See, sleep is important, Jeff. You gotta sleep.
Every now and then.
And this time, it's a young adult fantasy character. So basically, all he has is Megan O'Reilly, fairy princess with ADHD. That's all he woke up with. And from there, I helped come up with who her friends were, what circumstances she's in, and then we then just started talking about it from there, and I was in, So
yes,
that's kind of how it happened.
Kate kindly supports these wild ideas and waking dreams, and never tells me, oh, that's ridiculous. It's all, okay, well, let's develop that more. And it did work out really well, and it is very, very true. She is definitely the expert on sidekicks and supporting cast and fleshing them out. And, I think when we were talking before the interview, I referred to her as my sidekick. And, some people may think that sounds insulting or whatever. She absolutely exults in being the professional sidekick.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like the concept you came up with for Foul is Fair, that she's not one of the good guys as your main character.
She's a very nice girl, don't get us wrong.
But she's with the wrong family.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
it's just that, when you look, if you sort fairies into the pretty and the scary, she's with the scary.
Right.
I think that's great that she has that struggle of, I thought I was a good person, but to help my dad I have to become a bad guy. If I help my dad, I'm helping the bad guys, but it's my dad. But they're the bad guys.
But
it's
what she
my
really
dad.
learned is that it's very, very complicated.
And there's your conflict.
The
Internal
whole issue
character.
of whether you can sort everyone into the pigeonholes of good and bad just based on reputation and appearance and all of that stuff. It's a bit of a learning experience, and she's a little bit surprised on how fast she learns in some of the areas of it.
And some of it is just, if you look at the old school Celtic mythology, which is really what we were trying to capture with this, they don't necessarily have the fairies easily sorted into, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys.
You can tell by the leathery wings.
Easier to deal with and more orderly, but not necessarily consistently good guys. And it becomes easy to say, the Seelie are the good guys, the Unseelie are the bad guys, but it's really much more complicated than that. And that's one of the things we kind of explore, since we're really going for old school, non-Disneyfied at all fairies.
Excellent. And then I guess, Jeff, also, you are doing role-playing games. You helped out with some content for role-playing games?
Yes. I have done some work primarily for Deep 7 Games out of Seattle here. Recently got news that the book I probably put the most into is coming out pretty soon with the latest expansion to Deep 7's Aeroflight setting. And
Excellent.
their Lands of Enchantment expansion will be out soon, and I wrote a pretty good chunk of that.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to create a game around one of my new novels that's coming up.
Okay.
Well, it can be fun, because Jeff will just go ahead and roll up role-playing game stats for characters that we are not intending to make a game out of at all, just to see how it goes.
It's true.
So you use role-playing, your 12-sided dice to develop all your characters for your stories.
Not all of them, but...
Sometimes, we do, not necessarily using dice. We'll sometimes make, stats for characters to help flesh them out, get a better idea of them. Another friend has talked about eventually maybe doing some role-playing game stat stuff for Foul is Fair. So I don't know where that's going to go, but it's certainly out there, and parts of the book, excuse me, parts of the book I think certainly lend themselves to that type of idea, and it is a young adult book, so he's actually using gaming and the book and some of the characters as examples for kind of helping connect to young readers and teenagers in terms of education. So we'll see if that goes anywhere.
Very nice. Let's talk a little bit about punk Shakespeare. How did that come about? That sounds so cool.
Okay, since I was kind of in on the ground floor with that one, I'll take that one, even though I'm sure Kate is generally much more entertaining.
She'll jump in when she wants to.
Yes. So, last year, Writer Punk started on the NaNoWriMo boards. And we found that whenever, the punk topics were steampunk, cyberpunk, diesel punk, etc., kept coming up, the same group of people ended up kind of talking about it, or talking about, I write steampunk, or I write cyberpunk. So a couple of the people doing that, John Wesley Hawthorne and Esaias Glaster, started a community just for the punk writers.
Oh, very nice.
calling it writer punk.
New genre.
Just to be able to talk about those things off to the side without, some of the chaos that the nanoboards erupt into or threads disappearing.
Oh no.
And everybody got along really, really well. John did an absolutely amazing job of, inviting the initial people and searching threads, and, he was the real founding push behind it. So I'm really looking forward to getting one of his stories in one of the anthologies, which will probably be December next year, but more on that. But everybody was really enthused about it, talking a lot, and Asias Glaster came up with the thought at one point, hey, we've got enough people and enough authors here, we could write an anthology. What about science fiction Shakespeare or something? And a bunch of people just jumped on it, said, hey, that's an amazing idea, let's do it. So I got really enthused about this and wrote a 22,000...
You signed us up of all of the stories you could do in Shakespeare for The Winter's Tale. It's not exactly the first one to jump to most people's minds. However, it is the one that has exit pursued by a bear. And that's why he wanted it. So we ended up with about 500% more being pursued by a bear than the original in this version. The bear's own character, Thomas the Bear. And so that's what we ended up working on. And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, I was always
an
interrupt.
Perfectly good interruption. And as you noted, she jumped in when she wanted to. But yes, that is actually exactly the reason that I originally did The Winter's Tale, is because I remembered the world's most famous stage direction, and I really wanted to write the bear as a character. And the rest of the story kind of went from there. It was a lot of fun. It was the first thing that we ended up fully attaching Kate's name to, and absolutely deservedly so, as she helped write it. But anyway, so we finished this story and edited it, and we're all ready to go. And I asked on the community, okay, I've got this story done. How's everybody else doing? And nobody had even started yet. People thought it was a great idea, and maybe I'll do it for NaNoWriMo, or, maybe I'll do it later. So, as the most often published writer on there anyway, I sort of took it upon myself to become the head organizer. Started recruiting people to help with the edit and organization and proofreading, and started poking people to get their stories done and put down, okay, here's your deadlines.
Here come the deadlines.
The deadlines were magic.
That's what NaNoWriMo was all about. Here's your deadline.
Yeah. We actually set it up so people could use it as their nano project, and then gave them a submission date in December to have not just your story done, but have at least gone through and edited it, cleaned it up. And we got 5 stories into that volume, and now that the chaos of that is done, the process is going somewhat cleaner. We have a full editing team now. We have formatting, we have artists.
This is for book 2?
For book 2 and beyond, because we're planning on doing 2 of these a year.
Oh, wow.
So we have the second volume of Shakespeare Goes Punk coming out in December. And then we will have Merely This and Nothing More, Edgar Allan Poe Goes Punk, for March next year.
Oh.
And then we are planning a currently untitled Classics Go Punk anthology for next December. So March and December will be our target release dates for 2 a year.
Nice.
And kind of as the head organizer, after a lot of discussion, they decided to let me pick the charity that we were going to support. And that worked out much better than trying to figure out, splitting the money, who gets what with, because
who's paying what taxes and
right, exactly. Exactly. So all of the profits of these do go to charity.
Very nice.
To Paws specifically.
Yes. To Paws Animal Shelter, Animal Rescue, in Linwood, Washington, kind of north of me here.
Excellent. Excellent. And we were talking earlier before the show, you've got 3 dogs rescued from Paws.
I do. They're a really, really good shelter and cause. They have, multiple page packets on the personalities and behaviors and training of all the dogs. You have to go in and meet them. If you have other animals, they need to meet the other animals first. We got our first rescue dog up there. My wife was looking at a bonded pair of pit bulls that they had up there, and we were talking about it, went up to visit them, and unfortunately found out that one of them had severe health issues, was not going to be adoptable, was going to go back to her original family for kind of her final days at that point.
Right.
And they were able to take care of one, just not the pair.
Right.
So that was unfortunate, but in the process, we came across this huge Rhodesian Ridgeback cross dog with the first page of notes, where normally they've got, paragraphs and paragraphs. Somebody had just taken a pen and written in big letters and scribbled and everything on it. Gregory is a big dork. Took up the entire first page.
Wow.
And then noting that he was very smart and would do anything for bits of hot dog. And we decided we had found my wife's dog. So we adopted Gregory, and about 6 months later decided that he needed a playmate, needed another dog around. So we went back up, eventually would bring Gregory up to meet them, found out that he didn't do very well with the first dog we looked at, but instantly bonded with the dog that would become my riding sidekick for years. And got Kaya, who, when other dogs around, she was everybody's mom. She just adopted them, but eventually we had 3 dogs, and Kaya used to lay down right at my feet while I was writing, including during that 300,000 word blitz. She's partly responsible because she would sleep at my feet and only wake up to inform her brothers that they weren't allowed to go near me while I was writing.
Defense, protection.
And heard them off, so she got part of the dedication to my first novel. She did, unfortunately, pass away before the book was published. But I definitely credit her. And we just last year went and did go back up to 3 dogs.
Oh, wow. And
got our two-year-old pit bull. So she is definitely the enthusiasm and energy in the house now.
A lot of energy.
But unfortunately, much less sold on the idea that Jeff shouldn't be interrupted when he's writing.
This is very, very true. I no longer... none of the dogs will hesitate to interrupt me, and I'm kind of surprised that Pudding hasn't tried to get in on the interview yet. But she's still sleeping.
Don't jinx it.
Right.
Were they your inspiration for the ADHD character?
No, but
it is actually really fun because we're doing not just Celtic mythology, but world folklore in general in Phalosphere. Celtic is the basis because that's Megan's heritage, but we have Greek folklore, we have Hawaiian folklore, all that sort of thing. So it's really fun to be researching that in one window and researching the side effects of an ADHD medication overdose in the other window and trying to make sure that you've got the magic right and the science right at the same time. Anyway, I found that fun.
I love the research. That's some of the stuff that I love doing. So what kind of research are you doing? Are you doing a lot of the research, Kate, for...
Well, we both do. I have a lot of experience with fact-checking, just as an editor in general, and from dealing with, the sleep-deprived 300,000 words, in which he's trying to copy 18th century epistolary novel style, and sometimes he does it a little too well, and you've got your 10-line sentences. And sometimes there's the problem that he doesn't know how to address a baronet. And so I would have to go through, and I have a master's degree in history, so I was the one, getting all, no, they didn't talk like that, or sometimes they did talk like that. Because there's sometimes there's situations where you had to explain to people, oh, it seems anachronistic for them to say things like maybe and really. And it's like, okay, for the really highly educated characters, they're not going to say that, no. But your 10-year-old boys, yeah, they're going to say maybe and really. Those words have been around since the 13th century.
Okay, so they've been used, but by the lower common folk.
So she does that. I do also do a lot of reading, a lot of research. I wouldn't have even attempted to approach writing in, Regency style for epistolary novels if I hadn't, gone through and read some. Well, Frankenstein is my very favorite book. So I've read and reread Mary Shelley a bunch, but also, read some of the Austen, read some of the letters from the time. And very much well doing the 300,000 words was copying, Regency style writing. Not always exactly, especially towards the end, as Kate points out. But I did do a lot of historical research and research on events, and I have been fascinated for pretty much my entire life by mythology. So writing Foul is Fair, was pretty much a natural progression for me, as far as being able to get into the world folklore and the old style Celtic calendar and the treasures of Ireland and lost cities of the Fae and things like that. And then Kate does go through and do a lot of the fact checking and a lot of the history. And
so you're bringing in some other mythology into Foul is Fair, like the Hawaiian mythology. We all know Europe and Greek mythology. We don't know a lot of the other stuff as a general audience.
So we're starting from the first book, and part of my goal with that is, since I live near Seattle, and Seattle is a really, really multicultural area, including we get a lot of influence, from the Pacific Rim, from the islands. There are significant populations here, including the fact that Washington and Hawaii have a thing where students are treated as in-state going to universities from each other. So there's a lot of exchange there. But I wanted to reflect that in the writing. And I had in previous things that had been set around Seattle. So in addition to Megan, who is very European, gets into the Celtic Fae, and she herself couldn't really look more Irish if she tried. But her best friend is Lani Kahale, who is Hawaiian and in fact is half Menehune, which are the Hawaiian fairies who are credited with building a lot of the temples and other ruined structures in Hawaii, that they don't know who built them, so they credit them to the Menehune. But the fun part with them, well, they are tremendous builders and engineers and very creative. Everything they do has to be in one night, and if they are interrupted, the project is done. Which is how the Hawaiians talk about why some of the temples are only partway done, is the Menehune got interrupted.
And that's it. We're done.
they can do massive, impressive structures in one night with a crew of them. But if they get interrupted, they're done.
Right. So they need a dog at their feet to keep everyone away.
Exactly.
So yeah, Lonnie has this best friend who's an engineering geek and who unfortunately cannot always get Megan to listen about the "you stay in bed when I'm working" thing.
Yes. Lonnie is all of the practicality and all of that aspect to it. So we get into her, and then we introduce the first full fairy right off the bat with Aisling, who is a pixie with tattered wings who rides around on her service crow. So that kind of trio ends up just being a lot of fun, and having kind of the extremes of Lonnie, very practical, very, very focused, very into engineering and math, and Aisling, who can't necessarily keep her topic straight for a full paragraph, and loves wild explanations of things that change from explanation to explanation, like her, so where did fairies come from? And there, she just within the first book, she's got 3 or 4 different stories, and why her crow is named the Count changes every time she explains it. And Megan kind of stuck in the middle, most of the time leaning a little bit more towards Aisling's chaotic side, and Lonnie trying to run herd on them both.
So she's got a different reason every time, and you're like, what is the truth? Have we ever been given the truth?
And yeah, you never know.
That sounds exciting. Are we ever going to find out somewhere along when you get to book 8 or 9?
We do, somewhere in the first book, get the real story of the Count's name from someone else.
Someone trustworthy.
All of their explanations to actually give the real reason.
Oh, excellent. So you got to pay attention if you're reading it.
But as for where fairies come from, we've still only got Aisling's word on that. And there's going to be 4 books, so we'll see exactly how much we get on that. Jeff and I are currently working on book 2.
Excellent.
We knew going in this was going to be a 4-book series, even before we'd outlined everything, because 4 is a very important number in Celtic mythology. They have 4 major seasonal holidays, so each of the books is set on one of those.
Oh, perfect.
There are 4 mythological great treasures of Ireland. The sword, the stone, the cauldron, and the spear. So each book features one of those.
So let me guess, the first one's the sword.
The first one is the Sword of Light.
I saw it on the cover.
And then there are 4 lost cities of the Fae.
Oh, wow.
In mythology. So each of the books is set on one of the holidays and will heavily feature one of the cities and one of the items.
That's
so
excellent.
We knew going in it was going to be a 4-book series.
And there's a reason behind it.
Around that.
That's great. I love that. I love when you take something that's real and say, well, now let's make this work for our fiction.
Yeah, so it's going to cover a couple years of her life. It basically goes from Halloween of her junior year of high school, then to the summer solstice after her junior year, then May Day of her senior year, then winter solstice during her gap year kind of thing. So
that's excellent. So that's your young adult
contemporary
fantasy quadrology.
Exactly.
That's excellent. So, Kate, what got you into writing or editing? I guess you seem to do a lot more editing.
I wrote as a kid. I won poetry contests in the 3rd grade with some terrible poetry that is still on my parents' wall.
Did it rhyme?
Yes, it rhymed. It rhymed horribly. It was, anyway, but I was eventually mostly focusing on going into academia, and then once I was done with academia, I was focused on editing, and that's my big weakness. I'm always an editor first and a writer second, and so it means that I write, it comes out really well if I can get it progressing. I'm still really working on that, the major output. What I have will be grammatically correct, tightly fit together, consistent, but I have difficulty with the output, which fortunately, if I need output, there's him.
We can always clean up the output later, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And but however, I am still kind of proud. When it comes to output, I've been doing a lot better on the Foul is Fair series in just really contributing a major bit of output myself, even if it's non-sequential and needs to be stitched together by Jeff's, action scenes and what have you. But I was really proud of submitting for the 2nd volume of Shakespeare Goes Punk. See, Jeff had this idea that there should be a diesel punk as you like it. And however, he had no idea beyond that. He just sort of thought there should be a diesel punk as you like it with a twist ending and stuff like that. But
right, I had the idea and I had the twist ending. Yeah,
you definitely had the twist ending. And so, with nothing but a twist ending, I sat down and I actually started writing. And he had to do the fight scenes and eventually gave me a car chase to throw in there.
Yes. Yep.
Oh my gosh, could I not write a car chase to save my life? I can't even drive. So, but I did everything besides the fights and the car chase, all by myself, and I made that twist ending make sense in a character development way and that sort of thing. And I was really proud of the amount, because it's 13,000 words.
Wow,
and
good.
Only 3,000 of that is fight scenes and car chases. So it was a new record on output for in order for me.
Excellent. Well, that's how it begins.
Yeah.
Well, if that's the beginning, then Kate's comments on it afterwards were largely, okay, I don't want to do this again. You can do the long form writing. So I think
I have proved that I can do it, though.
she has proved she can do it. Now she will happily go back to being the sidekick.
Yeah, I can do it. I just don't wanna.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, it sounds like you guys have an excellent collaboration here.
I think so.
We're pretty symbiotic on that front.
And you guys are separated by mountains and miles and, two separate parts of the country. How does that work with your collaboration? How did you actually meet?
We met online. An online role-playing group, as a matter of fact.
Oh, perfect.
That also did a lot of, writing-based, obviously, role-playing and sort of fan fiction type stuff. And, so we eventually, as a friendship forms over the years, you reach that special best pal level of status where he says, "You want to look at my manuscript?"
He had you. He finally had you.
Well, I'd had a previous editor go through some of the Dawn of Steam stuff. Not that you'd necessarily know it, but finally it kind of got to be too much for her. So I had these manuscripts that I knew weren't good and knew needed work. And was going through slowly, because as much as I am very good at putting a lot of content on the page, especially when I get really going really, really well, I am a terrible editor, and I acknowledge it.
Your groove is straight down, just whoosh.
Yeah,
frictionless groove.
With enough time and effort on some stuff, I can do the better grammar and everything else, but it really slows down the writing. So I knew that I needed an editor on it.
Uh-huh.
And so, she mentioned that she was looking at doing some other editing jobs. So I asked her if she wanted to take a look at the 300,000 word manuscript.
She said, "I'm doing editing," and you're all,
going to do
what?
3 novels yet. And not knowing what she was getting into, yeah, she jumped in with both feet. And
into the deep end.
And, for a while, there was definitely some struggles on it in getting down the process, figuring out the working together. But she did a really amazing job and stuck with me. And I'm glad she did. And then she edited my, next young adult novel after that and got that really clean and ready for professional submission. And then we really started writing together. In parts of the book 3 of Dawn of Steam, she started contributing more material and really helping out and fully voicing one of the characters.
I'm going to go ahead and just let you know, in the entire series, when it comes to actual words spoken or written by the character of Julieta, he has exactly one sentence of her dialogue that is entirely his, and I took over eventually.
You are the voice of Julieta.
Because I admit, a couple of characters in Dawn of Steam are my girls.
You've taken ownership. They're me.
And so it's, I paid special attention and all that stuff. And Julieta, I liked bringing in some of her words and that sort of stuff, because she's a fantasy character in a science fiction story.
It's true.
And she has she's a half Romany, half Italian fortune teller in 1815, with all of the difficulties that might imply.
Right.
But what was fun was explaining to Jeff that it's a good thing he made her half Italian, because the gypsies did not use tarot cards in 1815. Those are an Italian invention when it comes to tarot card fortune telling. And the gypsies picked it up later. And so I was, pointing out to him that she would have gotten this from the Italian side of her family, not the Gypsy side. And history nerding out on him a little like that. Not that he minds. I mean, no one who wants to bring the eruption of Tambora as a central theme in their science fiction series, much less the Maori Potato Wars and how they would be impacted by basically an 1815 Iron Man suit, ever gets to get annoyed with someone history nerds on them. That's all I'm saying.
No, I did not mind a bit, and it actually really added a lot to Julieta having that mix of cultures as part of it, and it worked out really, really well. And Kate was the perfect voice to give voice to that character. Did a really good job with her and fleshing it out. And she's absolutely right. I do go to ridiculous lengths with having the history and with the Year Without a Summer, with the Maori Musket Wars, and some of the things going on at the time that I brought in the original manuscripts, and then she helped to check the history and make sure of the dates and helped clean it up, and then started suggesting other stuff to
I gotta admit, I did an entire baccalaureate honors thesis on British imperialism, and I did not know about the Musket Wars / Potato Wars. So there was a
lot going on.
A new history niche there.
Wow. There's just so much.
Yeah, sure.
So definitely plenty of geeking out on both sides, and my rewriting so much that I was writing in terms of some characters and that sort of thing. And then that's made it still much easier to work from the ground up on Foul is Fair. And that way I get to, I'm a big, when it comes to who are my girls in Foul is Fair, well, I try to help with everybody, but Lonnie is especially one of my girls. And
all right.
I also really enjoy the Count because he's got a bit of that, he's a crow, so everything he says is actually caw, but of course Ashley speaks fluent Corvid, so she'll answer everything he's saying. And so we get to have that sort of you said it Chewie kind of feel with his contributions. And and when it comes to things, we're going to be working from the ground up together still on yet another of his random ideas.
Maybe he shouldn't go to sleep.
He wakes up not with a character idea this time, which usually it's characters, but this time it's just the basic concept of a young adult, sort of darker fantasy novel called Unchosen, where the concept is what happens when the chosen one of the story dies in chapter 1.
Oh, I like that.
How do all of the sidekicks and supporting characters have to come together to adjust to that, to figure out what the heck's going on now, what do they do now? And so, of course, this means it's an entire story about the sidekicks. So despite the fact that it's going to be this megalithic, huge story to write with all these, dark themes to deal with, I'm still pretty excited about it because I do love me some sidekicks.
Yeah, that sounds great. I can see it now on his deathbed. The chosen one's all, but I'm the chosen one, dies.
So the thing is, we once more get to bring in a lot of different research and different folklores because we don't want any catch-all, all-purpose magic. We like it when it references concepts in actual folklore, and I'm really excited about the healer girl in Unchosen because she's a traditional Louisiana traiteuse, and
wow.
So it's really fun to bring that in because. I'll tell you, traditional Louisiana traiteuses, I've met many. They're lovely, nice people. You wouldn't want to put them up against Lord Voldemort by themselves with anything they claim to be able to do. They will
even
heal
in the furthest
a minor malady
version of the magic.
Sorry, what was that?
Even in the furthest out there, very very fantasy version of the magic.
Yeah, you still in the most far-fetched version of what they hope to do. it is not something you put up against anything dangerous.
Well, when you guys have Unchosen ready to go, we should definitely get you back on the show for that.
Oh,
We're hoping
Talk about that one.
sometime kind of late-ish next year for that, because that is going to be our biggest project to date, because we're going to do it as essentially 3 novellas or short novels combined into one book. So it's going to be 3 books of a relative tome.
Oh, very nice.
We're probably going to end up somewhere around 150 to 170,000 words with it, because it will be 3 books as one complete story.
Very nice. Are you going to be releasing it serially as well?
No, for
Probably.
once, I thought that finally, after he didn't want to do the War and Peace of steampunk, and that's how Dawn of Steam became 3 books.
Uh-huh.
And Foulest Fair really definitely needs to be a series. And we do all of these short stories. We have both the ones for Sound and Fury, and we have a recurring thing of steampunk short stories that we submit to all kinds of magazines and that sort of thing. But I wanted to go ahead and just try to do the one big, thick door stopper fantasy and see how it went.
Excellent. Yep. That sounds good.
Thank you.
So is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? It looks like we're nearing our end of the interview here. Is there anything else you wanted to let your readers know about the projects that you have now? I noticed that, Kate, you have got a couple other books here. I see Avasti Airships and Steampunk Trails.
Yeah, those are anthologies to which we submitted our short stories.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had a lot of fun with that series. It's about basically a steampunk ballerina and her soldier girlfriend.
Yes, so we have a number of short stories out there. Yeah, Steampunk Trails and Avasti Airships, and we're going to have a couple others of these Luca and Emily characters that we designed together and do short stories. And probably, I don't know if it's next year or 2017, but once all of the rights expire and revert to us, we're planning on saying, hey, look, we wrote a novel. And just releasing it as a collection of short stories.
Here they all are together.
Exactly.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
At some point, we're going to have an extra book in a year that we've already written, just sort of along the way.
Sneaky.
So that may be the 3rd book next year, or it may be book 3 in 2017 sometime.
Very nice. Very nice. So you've got your short, long, medium-term goals all ready to go.
We've got the short, we've got all of those, and we're aiming for the ultimate goal is at least 2 books a year with each other, and 2 of the Writer Punk charity anthologies a year. We're kind of moving, other than finishing the Luca and Emily series, we're moving away from short stories to concentrate on the novels, which I think has been working out pretty well. But we do have some out there. We have a couple more to do, including kind of the novella-length story that we want as the centerpiece of Luca and Emily. But I think that will be one of either there'll only be 1 or 2 in there that were written solely for that project, for the eventual book.
Right, so even if you've read all the rest, get the book because there's something new in it.
There would, yes.
Excellent.
We will get into the first days of the Orient Express still.
Oh.
Because those also, as is our tendency, obviously, from the interview, have a ton of history and research and real events, or, like the most recent one with the Crystal Palace, having it being much more active and still around in the 1880s as a major thing because of the greater focus on science and education and technology in a steampunk future.
Right.
So we do play with a lot of the research and very real history to tie in with them.
And it's good you got Kate, the actual historian.
Yes.
Thank you. But it's also good, of course, what with the, I did all the research on the Crystal Palace, its environs, how it would have been working different in a steampunk thing. But the motorcycle chase through it, he had to write himself because I can't write chase scenes.
Right.
So play to your strengths. Play to your strengths.
We do, and the strengths really, really combine well. And yeah, Kate is definitely kind of the glue that makes it all work. So
Oh, thank you.
Well, that's
So yeah,
great.
that's a lot of things covered. We've got our sort of publication schedule covering us right until around 2020.
Wow. That's
Because
planning.
we are eventually going to go back to the Dawn of Steam setting, because we had the original trilogy, and we are thinking of bringing in a sort of second trilogy set about 5 years after the first one ends. To really get more into the changed sociology of this steampunk setting and that sort of thing, on the, how the suffragette movement would be affected by all of the events of the stories, how all of these things.
Well, your readers are going to love that, returning back to it like, all right, it's back.
Yeah.
That's the hope. But yes, Kate has it all planned out for the next 3 years, and it won't be very long before we start adding a few more books, because we're really starting to get into the about ready to start outlining process for books we're not going to start on for about 3-4 years.
But get that all done, and then it's all output.
Yeah, exactly.
Good way to go. Good way to go.
Well, thank you very much for hosting us.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. So go ahead and hang on for a moment. I'm going to go ahead and sign off for everybody on the YouTube videos for that, and then I'll come back to you and we'll chat for a little more. So it was great talking to you, Jeff. Great talking to you, Kate.
Thank you.
And let me just sign off for everybody else. I'll be right back. So hold on. So, hey, thanks everyone for the spotlight. We had a great conversation here with Jeff and Kate, and both co-authors of Foul is Fair. I highly suggest it. From what I've read a little bit of it, it's very interesting. I like the whole concept of it, and it sounds like it's going to be a great series. So definitely, I'll put the link to this book down in the description. So if you're watching this video embedded in another website, just click on the little button down here that says Watch on YouTube, and you'll see the full description. I'll have a link to Foul is Fair on that, as well as other links. We have some of the websites and some of the social Facebook and Goodreads, and Jeff also has some YouTube trailers of some of his Dawn of Stream trilogy books, and they also have a trailer for Foul is Fair on there, so definitely check that out too. I'll have all those links down below. So thanks a lot for watching. Thanks very much to our special guests, Jeffrey Cook and Katherine Perkins, for sharing your experience with us. Thank you very much. Have a great day.